Hello everybody, this is Chaplain Ken and you're here watching Time with Chaplain Ken. It's been a while since I've been with you, but I'm getting back on track. We are still reviewing the book, Getting Out of Your Own Way by Mark Goldston and Philip Goldberg. It's a book on self-defeating behaviors. If you haven't seen the other podcasts, you can check down at the playlist and you can see the ones that you've missed. There are other ones that I've placed on and other book reviews that I've done, and you can see them on Time with Chaplain Ken on Facebook. But I'm also putting these on Rumble and in LinkedIn. So it's kind of a book review I'm doing. I find a book that I like, and this is a good one. It's got some good practical information on getting out of your own way, self-defeating behaviors, things that we do that tend to muck up our relationships and just make a mess of things sometimes. And sometimes these are things that, well, most of the time these are things that we're not even aware that we're doing, because it just comes natural. Getting in our own way comes natural, and we don't have to think about it too much. But yeah, we tend to do that sometimes. And so this book gives you some ideas on what that might look like in your life and your experience, and also gives practical steps to get out of it. This chapter is going to be about expecting others to understand how you feel. He begins the chapter by talking about a husband and a wife. They're having a struggle, and she's taking a sabbatical. She's writing a book, and so she's kind of sequestered herself from society. But she loves society. She needs society. So what she does, she plans get-togethers, parties, group gatherings, to socialize, to keep up that part of her life. And so she brings her husband and wants her husband to be a part of it as well. So it's something she's doing to supplement what she's lost, because she's writing a book. And if you've ever written a book, you kind of have to do that and get away and have some free space and nobody bothering you. Get kind of lonely sometimes. So she drags her husband along, who doesn't really want to go. And when he's there, he's not very sociable. He doesn't like it. They bicker and argue, and she's beginning to argue with him more and more, and he doesn't listen to her more and more. And she comes up with the phrase, and you've probably said these phrases as well, that you just don't understand me. And oftentimes in conflicts like this, we don't really understand one another. Because what happens, she began to look at her husband as somebody who was minimizing her feelings and what she needs in her life, and he began to look at her as somebody who's hypercritical, and they never saw eye to eye in really what was going on. And intellectually, that's what happens when we're looking at a situation and we're trying to understand it here. We rarely really can understand what and why somebody else does certain things, because you and I, and he points this out in the book, that nobody can see the other's point of view very well, because we try to filter everything we're experiencing through our own prism of values and our own principles about life. And so when we're trying to understand somebody's thinking, those things can get in the way. So as a result, what happens is she's trying to make him to understand, and he says that's nagging. And if it's a guy doing it, it's usually because he's controlling. And so the fight commences, and so the argument begins, and so the misunderstanding happens. So the way we filter the information is really the thing that causes the problem. So what happens? How do you solve this? How do you look at conflict and meeting each other's needs and getting our thought processes out of the way? Well, if you're a deep thinker, if you're more cognitive in your communication style and the way you approach people, it's going to be difficult to grasp this. But if you're more emotive and understand feelings and how to get there and speak of those things, then this chapter may be easier for you. So the author suggests that the solution is to come to understand the feeling behind what's going on rather than the thinking of what's going on. Because sometimes, when we think about or think through things, it doesn't make sense to us. It does to them, doesn't to us, and hence the conflict. But feeling is something different. When you can understand the feeling of what's going on, and what's behind the behaviors and what's happening between in the interpersonal dynamic between you and your spouse, girlfriend, whoever it is, coworker, church member, then you can finally get into a solution-based approach to a conflict. And feelings helps you understand the issue a little bit better. So feelings are common to all of us. We all have them. We all know what they are. Mad, sad, glad, scared, hurt. Those are the 5 basic ones. Many other ones: happy, joyous, empathy. Those kind of feelings that we have. We share those in common. So if we can find that common ground through looking at what we feel about a certain circumstance, then we can work through a solution. So by understanding the feelings and then caring about the feelings of the other person, then you can work through them. Because, I'll be honest with you, sometimes people want to talk about their feelings about what's going on, and the other person just doesn't understand it or even appreciate it. It's not going to do you a bit of good. So the idea, if you're in a relationship with somebody and that somebody means something to you and their feelings are important to you, then you can find the solution. You can begin to understand. Then there's an intimacy and a power behind the solution that thinking about things doesn't get you there. So in order to make a lasting solution to a problem, get into the feelings of what's going on. And what does that look like? So when you're talking about feelings, you want to begin to listen to the other person and develop a sense of empathy. Empathy takes down the barriers. Empathy takes down the guard. Empathy gives you the opportunity to really listen and explore and understand without any kind of conflict or any kind of prejudice or preconceived ideas. It gets you to understand them. It drops the defenses. He puts it this way: empathy is a priceless commodity because it invariably diffuses the hostility. When you have empathy, when you can feel what the other person is feeling, it takes away the anger, it takes away the hostility, it lowers the temperature, it slows down the heart rate, and you begin to understand empathetically. He also says in the book, it is psychologically impossible to be angry at someone if at the same time you feel what he or she is feeling. And there's a lot of truth to that. In our counseling practice, my wife and I, we began to understand the behind-the-scenes feelings behind people's lives and what they've been going through. And when you begin to talk to people on an emotive level like that, you begin to understand what's going on in their heart. And when you feel the sadness, when you hear the pain, when you experience the fear and understand what they're going through, and they're able to talk about those things, and especially if it's like you're having a conflict with somebody and you're understanding behind the scenes, there's probably more to it than just what's being said. It's hard to get mad at them. It's hard to get mad at somebody when you're counseling and they're reading you the riot act and they're taking it out on you. And this is for you counselors who probably have done this before. You're taking the brunt of their pain and you're hearing it, but you're not personalizing it. You're understanding that it's a response to what they've been going through in their life, not about you. And so in a relationship, when you begin to understand those feelings of the other person, your defenses drop, or at least they should. And when your defenses drop, and you're not on guard, and you're not waiting for the next punch to come through, and you're not, ready to attack back, if you're not being aggressive, it can take all of that away, and you begin to really understand what's going on underneath. And that helps you realize that perhaps maybe what you're doing is hurting the other person. So he says in the book that one effective way is to stimulate empathy is to use analogies to translate one person's feelings to the other person so they can understand what you're going through. In other words, sharing with them how, or at least putting yourself in their shoes to get them to understand what they're feeling. So you kind of take what you're going through. And in this circumstance, the counselor helped the husband realize how his behavior, how he would feel if somebody was doing to him what he was doing to his wife. And he began to recognize and say, yeah, that wouldn't be good. and he realized that what he was doing was hurting his wife, and that allowed him to begin to change and realize that he needed to do something different. Then he had to do the same thing with the wife. He tried to show her how being hypercritical to him isn't helping the situation either. And so she began to realize that the way she was responding wasn't helping. So oftentimes in these relationships, it's a perfect storm of conflict that tends to make it go on and on and on. And so when you begin to talk about the feelings and you get in to understand what's going on underneath, the fight usually ends pretty quickly. So that's the suggestion in the book. So he says in the book that some of the things that you can do to take action. He says if not being understood has made you frustrated instead of becoming hostile, pause and try to express yourself in a different way. If you're ever getting at that frustration point, pause and rephrase what you're saying. Reframe and express yourself in a different way, and include your feelings in the situation. There in counseling we teach people how to communicate and use I statements. I feel, and you express a feeling when a certain circumstance happens, and that lets the other person know that in the dynamic that's causing the conflict, the feeling that's coming up is this. Then you can address what you're doing to encourage that feeling or to foster that feeling in the other person. And if you're honest and you love the other person, then you can begin to make changes. He also suggests that instead of lecturing and criticizing and intellectualizing, try using analogies that'll help the other person feel what you feel. And when you can do that, you get on the same page emotionally, okay? And then that helps you guys. It helps the two parties bond a little bit more. You become more intimate when you understand the feelings of the other person. You come closer. It does really help the relationship when you can speak on this level to one another. Instead of you, criticizing, judging, yelling, screaming, trying to get your way, forcing your way, saying that doesn't make any sense, it's got to be my way or the highway. Nah, that never works. Whether you're in a home setting, whether you're at work, whether you're in church, that kind of communication style has got to go. And so when you begin to understand and speak on a different level altogether, you find that the communication between the parties can be a whole lot better, more fruitful. The connection can get stronger. The bond can get stronger. The love can become even more intimate than you've ever experienced. So good advice from this guy. And then he says, first identify your emotions, figure out exactly what you're feeling and why, so that you can relate and share those feelings to the other person. So that's important. You got to figure out sometimes what is the feeling that's going on behind the dynamic. What are you experiencing inside? So that may take some introspection. It may take you to sit down and think about what's going on inside of you and why, where it's coming from. And when you begin to understand that, you can look at the problem in a different way and find a solution for what you're going through. He also suggests that think of a situation that would make the other person feel what you feel. Analogies work best when they fit the individual's personality and circumstances. So you know your partner better than I do. You know what makes them tick. You know how they think. Try to relate your feelings in a way, in a story or a circumstance where they can feel and understand what you're feeling as well. And if there is a close bond between the two, then that person should, I'm saying should, guys and gals, we have to care for one another in order for this to work. So when we share these feelings, we don't say, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, because that ain't going to work. So we listen. We listen because we want to heal. We listen because we want peace. We listen because we don't want any more tension. We listen because we want the kids to learn how to communicate as well. We share these feelings and we're open with one another so that our kids can experience what good, healthy communication between mom and dad look like. And then they can use that as they grow, and they share that with their family as they grow. So the time to be defensive needs to go. The time to think that, well, I got to have things my way, that's got to go. The time to think that you know better than everybody else, that has to go. Because we sometimes, just honestly, we don't know it all. We're not always right. My way's not always the best way, no matter how much I think of myself. No, I got to be humble enough to be able to say, yeah, I'm messing this up, because I don't like the feelings that I'm engendering in my spouse. He suggests also ask how he or she would feel in this situation. Don't be accusatory. Speak in an even, conciliatory tone when you're sharing these things. We're not looking to win an argument. When we're looking to win an argument, we're trying to make the other person the loser and you the winner. You don't want to do that, because you'll never win. I mean, you may win the argument, but you'll lose the person. I used to argue theology with people quite a bit when I first became a Christian, and I'd win a lot of arguments. I've shared this before. I'd never won the person. I was kind of alone all by myself. The lone Christian all by himself, and I was the only one that was right. Yeah. So it never works. It's something we have to unlearn. And then he also suggests, once the other party acknowledges the appropriate feelings, ask if he or she can see a parallel to your experience. You might have to prod, as in, when you criticize me in front of your friends, I feel just the way you do when, and then they can fill in the blank. Or you can help them figure that out. I feel the same way when you yell at me. I feel the same way when your dad yells at you, or the boss yells at you, or your mom yells at you, or something that's similar, so they can get the idea and understand what the feeling is. Because it's hard to argue with feelings. I mean, if we're honest, and somebody shares something with you about what they're feeling inside, then listen with your heart, with an empathetic, with feeling, with your heart, so that you can understand what they're going through, and you can feel something for that, and then realize that your part in the conflict can be changed. All right. And then it says, switch roles by imagining a situation in which you'd feel what the other person has been feeling. Go back and forth, talk about these things, talk through these things, put the shoe on the other foot, try to understand where they're coming from, and see both sides, and it helps you resolve the conflict. And then let the other person know that you understand how he or she feels. You're likely to see that the hostility dissolves before your eyes, freeing both of you to communicate more openly. Short chapter, good information. Again, the usable insight is when they just don't understand, get them to feel. Get them to feel instead of trying to understand. Because like I said, if one of us is doing it and one of us is trying to get our point across, it can come across as nagging, or it can come across as controlling. And we don't like those things. And so when we think we're being nagged at, I don't like it. And so I bet you don't either. So try that. If there's a misunderstanding, then get into the feelings of the thing and figure out, what's going on. All right? Well, that's it for today. I hope you learned something. And like I said, if you see this on Facebook, on Time with Chaplain Ken, and you want to like and share, be my guest. It's free counseling, free information. I'm not making any money. This is just something that I like to do to help my community, to help my people out, and help anybody out that's watching. You can catch me here. You can catch me on LinkedIn if you want to link in with me and see it there, or Rumble. I put these on Rumble as well. I try to put them on YouTube, but YouTube's kind of weird. I was putting some on, but they shut me down for some reason, or they closed my account. I guess I was inactive or something. But so you can catch me on those other platforms. And give me a like and a subscribe or a follow. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave a comment. I'll answer when I see them. Okay? You guys take care. Remember, God loves you. Pay attention to yourself. And I'll see you the next time. Bye-bye.